Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Friday night's edition of Center Stage. I'm Kheri, Hines, your host. This week, we encountered yet another blow when we found out that a New York grand jury had no-billed Officer Daniel Battaglio for the chokehold he administered on Eric Garner that caused his death. After hearing the news, I began to question, why does this continue to happen? And that is when the answer really appeared before me. The reason we keep seeing in police killing after police killing, they are no-billing the officer, is basically because we have no bills on the law books that protect citizens against police brutality in a strong enough wording, such as you cannot shoot a fleeing suspect, or you can't shoot an unarmed man in a surrender position, or you can't use an outlawed chokehold to kill a man, or you have basically a standard and a uniform scene assessment before you open fire on a 12-year-old at a park playing with a play gun, or you must properly assess the scene before you shoot and kill a man in a Walmart who's looking at a gun that is sold in a Walmart. In the words of Eric Garner, this stops today. We must basically take the protest from the streets of Ferguson to the steps of Capitol Hill and demand that new laws be put in place to specifically address police brutality, police harassment, and police misconduct. And we must adopt the three strikes, you're out. In Texas, there's a three strikes and you're out, and you go directly to prison. The same should apply to police officers in situations where their conduct is already giving us the flag that there's going to be a problem. And we really should be getting rid of those officers before they eventually kill someone, as in the situation with Daniel Botello. He had a record that indicated he was a problem cop and that he needed to be looked at more closely or even gotten rid of, but no one addressed that. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to deal with the topic from Ferguson to Capitol Hill. Our guest tonight is Mustafa Ansari, and I don't see him on the line yet, but we're waiting on him to call in. But in the meantime, my co-hosts are here. Good evening, Christopher. Good evening, AJ. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Chris? Hi, Kheri.
I'm good. Y'all heard my intro. Do y'all agree with that? We got to take it to the steps of Capitol Hill if we want change.
Well, I do like the intro, and I like the R. I like the addition. But I'm thinking that just like there's this uprising in all these different cities. See, the federal law wouldn't affect the laws of the state until the state actually adapts. It will affect them in a way, but I think we have to change them in the state first. But we can actually attack it from the federal level, but we need to attack, just like every community has these boundaries, county lines. Each community is connected, and we're all connected. So until we actually begin to clean up and address these issues in our own communities, in our own cities, in our own states, I don't think it'll reach the boundaries of this whole United States.
What are your thoughts tonight, Christopher?
I do agree with that. I think that it can be handled either going federal to state or state to federal. But with what AJ said, the significance behind that is that if you deal with the state and the state statutes and laws first, and you can get them looked at, I believe they're much easier to have a case, number one, than be able to litigate that or demand that at the state level, because it's a simpler move to get a statute or get the Constitution within the state overhauled or get that law brought up before review so that it could be considered for being overturned or modified. I do know, like in Illinois now, with the protests that are going on, I think from what I'm hearing, they're developing certain strategies to attack specific laws that deals with use of force, that deal with malicious conduct, malicious prosecution, and so forth. And those are, I think, because, see, that's something that the state legislator can really overturn, the governor and so forth. And then from there, I think that that's a good platform for the good platform to then go federal.
Well, I agree with all of that. But we've seen our president. I love my president, so please don't take this wrong. But we've seen executive orders like crazy. So why can't we, seeing that we're basically in a state of emergency, every other week now with someone getting killed. Why can't our president put an executive order on the books immediately to address this?
Well, if you look at it, Kheri, the state of Texas has sued the president and, well, actually the president, not they sued the president almost 1,000 times since he's been in office.
Okay.
And I'm saying even now the health care plan is not really accepted in Texas because they won't accept the money from a black guy in the White House. Mm-hmm. So we still leave the nation in the number of children that don't have medical that can't get medical attention because they don't want to accept the money and they're trying to make all these other things like they're working out. But that's the main goal. So I'm saying if it's a federal law, I think it will trickle down. But I don't think, because I really don't, wait, let me finish. I really don't think the president has enough eyes to see what's happening in every county of these 50 United States.
Okay. Christopher, before we bring our guest up, I see he's on the line. What are your thoughts on an executive order to address this?
Well, I think that the executive order is only going to be as good as if the people force the government's hand. The rights is one thing, and I think that's a platform. But if we actually want to force the hand, the marching on Washington and also the litigation to try and get that done, I put it to you like this: the attorney told me a long time ago that the one way that you make the government work is you make them have to do it. You not just through demanding, but if people will continue to mobilize and galvanize, you can construct what you want. And with enough people behind it and with enough pressure, there's not much of anything that cannot get changed. But I think the movement that's going forth now, the pressure has to stay on because they're just now feeling this new awakening with the people and the people speaking for what they want and what they won't tolerate. But I think we have to continue with this going forward. It still has to be organized and strategized, and then we have to pick out specific issues and laws that we want to address, and then one by one go down the list and get what we want.
Okay, great. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my guest is here. He's Mr. Mustafa Ansari. He is the Dean of Students at the American Institute of Human Rights, and he's also in the past worked as a black lawyer for justice for the Nation of Islam. Good evening, Mr. Ansari. How are you?
Good evening. Very well, Kheri. I'm doing well. I was listening to your callers, and it's good to see that we are attentive on trying to find a solution.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on getting one? I mean, what do you think we should be doing?
Well, it's totally different than the callers, and it's totally different than what the president suggest, and what we suggest is international law. This case is above state and federal laws, and the reason why is that the states have been the ones, their prosecutors, district attorneys, and their judges have been the main culprits in looking the other way when there have been police killings. So they are unhelpful at this point. State legislatures, likewise, as well as federal legislatures, have failed to pass the racial profiling bill since about 2003. In fact, President Obama worked on it and approved it, and there was a sponsored one in Illinois, but it has not made its way through the state and the federal government. And what we have to realize is where does it take us when we have an adversarial state government and we have an adversarial federal government? The remedy when you have an adversarial state government and an adversarial federal government all the way up to the executive, who could have passed a racial profiler, who could have made a stronger statement in taking the guns and the tanks out of our neighborhoods, who could have made a stronger definitive remarks regarding African American youth. He never said anything about African American anything. He lumped us into a minority category with Native Americans and people with disabilities and immigrants, and we're neither one of those categories because we've been deprived of our understanding of our international status, which is the right. We have a special status because of our sojourn here in the United States, our mixture of tribes here, to be an indigenous people who have suffered harms. So when you're in that status, you have special rights and special privileges because people who have been in a situation that we have, indigenous people are either people that have been harmed by crimes against humanity or genocide. Those people, and this is the ruling that we obtained in Durban, not we particularly obtained, but what the world state said in Durban in 2001 is that slavery is a crime against humanity. Now, all of the repercussions, all of the customary notions that have come from that slavery a relationship that we have with the United States has made its way through Jim Crow up until the present time. America has never shook his customary racial norms. So the state and federal government, they're going to be reluctant to and hostile to a changing of these types of laws, and they're changing. And even if they did have the laws, it would not change their outlook towards us. For example, in New York, the Derrick Garner case, you had cameras. You've seen exactly what went on. And the grand jury, white grand jury, dismissed that and let the white policeman go. Why? Customary norms, customary racial understandings of Americans. In the Michael Brown case, contradictory statements in the grand jury at the pre-trial stage should have been kicked up to a trial stage just because there were contradictory statements. That grand jury is now a purveyor of facts, excuse me, a purveyor of facts, but not the purveyor of those facts being cross-examined, so they should have been gone through a higher court. The international law, there's a violation that we suffered collectively because of Michael Brown and Eric Garner and all those other killings. We suffered collectively a crime against humanity and a civil and political crime, and now allowing us access to the United States courts. We are entitled to those children, those young men were entitled to, their families were entitled to access, and we as a people were entitled to have, because of the community harm it did to us, we were entitled to see the public trial of those two policemen, and that didn't occur. So what we propose is to bundle all of these cases, take them above the state and federal level, because there's another layer that hasn't been taught to us, and that we teach in our university, in which I'm the dean of. We teach that the superseding law in the world is international law. It supersedes any of the state's Supreme Courts, including the United States Supreme Court. We have to do this because right now we've been slapped in the face 3 times, and the reason why is we have John Conyers, who's head of the House, the chairman of the House of Judiciary. We have President Obama, who's the executive officer over the whole United States, and we have Eric Holder, who is the chief police over all the prosecutors. And these 3, in the power that they're supposed to have, cannot bring enough influence in what they're doing to bear to bring one third-rated policeman in Ferguson, Missouri, to trial. He should have been indicted by the federal government, and it hasn't been done. I was in Atlanta, and they had the nerve to tell us that I was at the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and they told the congregation that it was a symbol for Eric Holder. Eric Holder said that we're still investigating. This is crap. They have been investigating allegedly since the crime has occurred. If the prosecutor could have finished with his investigation, which took an extremely long time. The federal government, with all its resources, should have been filled through with this investigation. The only thing to do would be to indict Darren Wilson and that murderer of Eric Garner. This is above state and federal authority. We must exert our international rights, and we are here to teach our people to be human rights defenders and human rights monitors. This way, we can become apprised of who we are, what status we have. We have been taught by the educational system that we are a minority, without teaching us that we are a special minority. We are a special minority because we are indigenous to the United States. We were born here. We were mixed here. We come out with a whole different status because we're neither African nor are we American. We are African American, and that status is entitlement to lands, special subsidies, and turnarounds. We have to grow up to understand that we do not have to pay attention any longer to directions from Washington. We can go above Washington and go to Geneva.
So, let me ask you, did something similar to that happen? The reason Rodney King won his suit so quickly and everything was settled so quickly, isn't that what happened, or something similar?
The King suit was settled here in the United States. No, I'm referring to courts that are above the jurisdiction of the United States. And the suit that I'm talking about is a suit for a loss of life, because your life has to be compensated for. So the suit would be one for loss of life, violation of access to the court. It would demand the United States to have its officers undergo training, because the United States is responsible as responding superior, and otherwise as a superior authority over the states. So when the state of Missouri's officers, their police and their prosecutors failed to indict the murderer of Michael Brown, the United States has a duty to intercede. So, and if he fails in his duty, if it fails in his duty to indict Darren Wilson, then it's up to us as international experts to bring the United States to one of the United States courts, one of the United Nations courts, either in Geneva or either San Jose, Costa Rica, or maybe The Hague. So it's different, and I understand that it's different for most of you because they didn't teach us in the political science departments and African American studies departments about this superseding status that we have. We have 4 statuses, and they've only taught us 3. They only taught you your city rights as a person of a city, your state rights, and now your federal rights as citizens of a federal government. But they didn't teach you your international rights, and this is what Malcolm was referring to. That there's an entire set of rights called human rights. And when we talk about human rights, then we're talking about solutions. When we talk about civil rights, we're talking about a conundrum. In other words, it's a Rubik's Cube of misunderstanding and complications between the state and the federals and the federals and the states, and neither one of them are going to do a doggone thing when it comes to black folks. So, no, this is different.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, sister.
Aren't you on your way to Ferguson to teach them that?
Yes. We are looking to get to Ferguson. I don't have an exact date, but it would be sometime not only in Ferguson, but in Chicago, in New York, and we have an online university. So we teach online, but we are actually going to go to Ferguson because Ferguson is 70% African American, 30% other. So the 70% African Americans should hold the mayor, the chief of police, city council positions. So what we're going in to teach is democracy, how to do that, how to control Ferguson, and how to have good governance under the auspices of human rights, in which we would have to teach the judges, lawyers, and prosecutors, because they're still on this law and order kick, and law and the order kick is a violation of human rights, because an offender, if there is an offender, has to be given the right to rehabilitate. So different training has to be, so the judges have to be trained, the juvenile judges have to be trained, the policemen definitely have to be retrained in how to arrest people and the purpose of the arrest and the rules of arrest. And I heard someone in the beginning talk about that there are certain standards. Yes, there's certain international standards. You cannot, and this is what the American standards, you can't shoot someone, a thing person. Even in Missouri, you can't shoot someone that, you can't shoot someone that international law that does not that when you're not in imminent fear of bodily of death. So you can't use deadly force unless you are in fear of imminent deadly force. So these principles and these understandings that the police don't have, we don't trust. When President Obama said we're going to train, we don't trust your training, because your training up to this date has resulted in unmitigated deaths. So we want to train these police when we get to Ferguson. We want to train the judges, the prosecutors, the city council in the human rights way to treat people. So yes, we're on our way to Ferguson. I can't put a date to it, maybe 4 months, 6 months from now, but we're going there, and we'll probably stay there until those changes are done, and maybe longer.
Now, what would make, and I'm trying to understand, what would make them comply? I mean, because on what authority can you force them to comply with these new rules?
Well, we're talking just politics. So when we talk about politics, we talk about majority rule. So in Ferguson, for example, we expect there to be a new mayor, okay? And that mayor has certain powers. It has power to appoint the police department. It has the police chief. And we expect the city council to be African American. So when we go to Ferguson, we're going to train the youth and the experts there in Ferguson how to exert their power under human rights. And so when we do that, we're entering into a discussion with the police chief, the new police chief, the new mayor, the college students that are there. We're going to give them and convince them to pass, number one, the third an ordinance under CERD. CERD is the Conventional Elimination of Racism and Discrimination. This is a comprehensive document that will eradicate racism in Ferguson, and it would and how it does that, it gives the people of Ferguson, our monitors, the one we train as monitors, to monitor all levels of discrimination in the police department, in the judicial field, in the judicial department, in the city council, in the corporations that are doing business with it, and the contracts with Ferguson. That's the monitoring system. So these things that we're talking about are legal things that concern how to participate and control your democracy, and that's what it's all about. That's what politics is all about. Who gets what? And when you're talking about the United States, you're talking about majority politics. So we're going to teach the people how to obtain that. And so the people that you're talking about complying would be our own people. It would be the mayor who would be complying with our request, the people of Ferguson request, to have the administration enact training for the police department, for the judges, for the judiciary, the judges, and for the probation department. So the compliance, when you control things, the people that would give you the authority to do that would be the mayor and the city council, the new mayor and city council.
And you said that before, new mayor and new police chief and new city council. How do you all plan to change all of that in the next 6 months?
Actually it's going to be done in 4 months. There's a 5 months. There's a election in 5 months in Ferguson. Okay. And because of the understanding of the importance of going to the polls and who to vote for, we expect to sweep the positions of mayor, city council in Ferguson within 4.5 months. This is just how it's done. I'm living right now right outside of Atlanta, Georgia. It used to be an all-white suburb about 10 years ago. About 5 years ago, it started to change. And so right now we have a majority. The last election, we ran a slate. I didn't. I just arrived here from California to work on the international cases. They ran a slate of 8 and won all of the offices. In the South, the understanding is very clear. On the territory that we control, in which we're majority population, we run, period. It's very different than in other places. But in the South has got a really, I guess, an embedded understanding of that. So right now, that's how it goes. So you know, this is just politics that we have been deprived of because we didn't know, number one, our status, and number two, some of our organizations and representatives who were supposed to be doing this and teaching this and giving us this understanding failed to do so.
So there's enough registered black voters in Ferguson to do this?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. I say get to work. Listen, I say let me know how I can help. I mean, I can't believe it's something that was that easily done and nobody thought to do it yet. But I'm glad you are going there and you're going to help the people of Ferguson. In fact, I think we have a Ferguson caller on the line who I was trying to give your information to this week. 314-830. Good evening. You're on Center Stage. Sorry, I didn't open the line properly. 314-830. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hi, Kheri. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Just want to say, you were prophetic when you spoke about if there was no indictment that you were concerned this would become a national problem, and it has. Couple of things that we've been doing here is we've been trying to get as much documentation as humanly possible. We're also trying to collect data, doing some surveys and focus groups to actually get a larger gauge of what is going on. And, as you well know, we talked about last week what we're doing. We're working actually through London. And that's how we're going. But what, like you said before, we need to bring everyone together because right now we have multiple sects that are doing certain things. Everyone's got their section, but everybody needs to come together. And that's where we are right now.
Let me pause that. Explain to Mr. Ansara what you were referring to when you said you were working with London.
Well, what we did was we had a collaboration of testimonials and videos that we sent directly through them and petitioned on behalf of Ferguson. We also had the family actually went and spoke to them and gave testimony to them. So right now what we're looking at is how we go about this correctly, the logistic part, which is why you wanted to connect us. That's what we want to look at, all the pieces. Even though we're engaging and we're reaching out, we haven't gone through the formal process. Now, there are people here that are aware of international law. I agree with you. A lot of people might not be aware of that international law proceeds individual governments, which precedes states and so on and so forth. Now, someone asked, how is that going to make a difference? We started the United Nations as a result of putting the Germans on trial, the Nazis on trial. So we have to respect the entity of which we created in the 40s. Also, we use it to discipline other states. So we cannot sit here and say, do as I say, not as I do. We can be sanctioned financially. We can be sanctioned militarily. We can be sanctioned to the point where we no longer have the status that we have. We're already on the edge right now. That being said, the one thing we want to do is we want to look at it from a police state. We want the United States to be seen as a police state. There were conversations that were had about, is this a black issue? What I've observed, and this is just my personal opinion, once the police got cocky, killing off a couple of brothers, they got real cocky and they started beating sisters, started killing white boys, started kicking white women in the stomach. They are so cocky now, they fist pumping each other. So you got cops that went to a whole other place. Oh, I'm immune. I sent out a poll asking how many people are aware of individuals that are on the grand jury. Do you know what it takes to be on the grand jury? If so, did they actually sit in one where police was being investigated? Was there an indictment? Right now, I don't like what the numbers are saying. I don't know anybody who's ever been on the grand jury because the people, there are certain things. They use a certain group all the time. Registered voter, great in tax paying, have no warrants, engaged in the community, engaged. They go to the meetings. These people are involved. It's not this large thing that you spin around and you pull a name out, Jim Brown. No. So people got to understand, even if laws are changed, you have to think about what makes up the grand jury. What is that all about in that process? See, you can tell people, let's vote, but you got to really get to the grand jury. Now, you got to understand this, too. The person sitting there who's being prosecuted have a right to have a jury of their peers. So that means they guaranteed that whatever it is, it should be half of their own ethnicity. That's the person that's being prosecuted, not the victim. So, but if you have enough jurors that are of ethnic background other than white male, then, and by the way, majority of the jurors now, they are white females. In the past, they were white males, but they're more white females. I can't explain that. I don't know the history behind that. But if you do expand it, then the chances of them being involved are increased. I know people who have ran away from jury duty, but in order to become a grand jury, you actually have to have done jury duty. They don't throw you in the mix of something big like that till you've gotten your teeth wet.
Ms. Ansari, you want to address anything that she said, that the caller said?
Yes. Well, first I want to congratulate her for her understanding of international law and the fact that there is another level. The second thing is that because of that, we should use all the levels of international law. And when we do that, we get away from a focus on the grand jury per se, because that's domestic law. And what we see and what we've noticed is that the only way for the United States, the states, all 50 of them, because it's a national issue, for all 50 of them for us to have jurisdiction in one single case for all 50 of them to come in conformity with a certain standard of laws that everyone agrees on, and that we have the ability to monitor their implementation. That's where we want to see the remedy coming to, because when we start getting into, and that's where the problem has been, into the grand juries and what's in the prosecutor's mind and who this prosecutor is, and then behind the prosecutors and the police, you have these police associations that are very, very strong, and to the extent that we're not really fighting the police, we're fighting the association, the Fraternal Order of Police, I
agree. I agree with that. But the one thing that I believe is important is, when you go and when you're attacking the enemy, you have to have a force that is, on the outside, and then you got the other force digging under the ground internally. So to me, that's why we have different sects here at Ferguson. There's like 10 different sets. So we have all these different sections. Because we all originally came together, and then we all broke off into groups. We came together, and we developed these committees, and we've actually not come back together as a whole. We've been separate as committees since August. Now, that being said, we want to address the grand jury issue because one of the things that people have to understand, why is the grand jury picked, and why is it so often that African Americans or Latinos are given these large, erroneous jail times for the minor things? When you dig deeper, you find out, who makes up the grand jury, who makes up those jurors. And I must be honest with you, rarely, I've never heard of anyone going to grand jury. Now, I know a lot of educated African Americans that vote, but I believe with all my heart they get out of jury duty with their slick selves, therefore they don't ever qualify for the grand jury component, which is the bigger one, like, of course, as you mentioned, the Simpson case. So that's a reality, and that's something you have to understand. Who's the gatekeeper? Then, like you said, politics. That's the other thing. Originally, we did register the people in Ferguson. The problem was they didn't come out and vote. This happened before November. The current prosecuting attorney was up for election, and he was uncontested. So often you have to understand all the components. It's not this problem. It's not that problem. And because we're making the United States become a police state, then you look at it from an international perspective where now you're talking about what dictators do, rounding up people. You're talking about just killing them. And so we're asking, the more data you got, the more information you got, the more testimonials you got, bring it on. Bring it all on so that we can have so much. They can't say this is an isolated situation. Or like Fox likes to say, you're making it a black or white issue. And one of the things that we did unique, we did talk at the beginning about bringing in other organizations, about bringing in Wall Street and Boycott and MAD and all these other organizations. And there were people that would say, they'll hijack it, they'll take it away. I said, no, they'll take it on another level. So as a result of us exposing the dark side of policing, they were able to give their testimonials. And when you have a national a swell, you know what happened with the homosexual movement? I don't want to say homosexual, with the gay movement, gay rights movement. Republicans had to actually recant. Republicans had to acknowledge, because it got so big that they lost the control. They couldn't hold the baby anymore. The baby outgrew them. They had to let the baby go. That's what we want. We want it to be the same thing as the feminist movement. We want it to be so big that even if they wanted to, they have no choice but to accept the reality. You don't want it to be small. You want it to be big. Absolutely.
Well, Mr. Ansari, did you say that you don't think protests work or rioting work?
Yeah, well, no, protests are not a power transference tool. And there's a PRIP. I use a PRIP analysis to explain this. Protests are just like the first level of struggle, but after that, one must look at how to transfer power, and the R is recalls and referendums, initiatives, and then a plebiscite. Now, I'm an internationalist. And I'm a self-determinist. And when you are an internationalist, you are a advocate of self-determination. Saying that, I have a different, totally different end game than the sister, even though she understands some of the international, I have some of the international understandings. The main international understanding is that, and runs through all of the conventions of the United Nations, is that people have the right to self-determination. So saying that, I do not look at this as politics in the traditional sense of having Democrats and Republicans voting in this way or that way. I look at us as being I look at us as Dubois. I look at us as King in his last years. I look at us as Malcolm X. I look at us as a nation inside of a nation. And the reason why I look at us as a nation inside of a nation and it being the strongest is because it's the strongest position, political position, that we could possibly have. When you're a nation inside of a nation, i.e., e.g., indigenous people, you have the right to your own police department. You have your right to your own judiciary in your area. You have the right to control over your own schools. This is our goal. Our goal is not to become powerful like the feminist movement or the gay movement or any of those movements. Because those are just what they are. They're just a movement in the domestic law from one place to another place. We want our status, which is we have the right to an indigenous status. We have the right to be looked at as a special minority, just like the Indians and Eskimos, people from Guam and the Atolls, Puerto Rico. We have the right to be our own self under international law. And so that is the end game for me because in that way we have $1.2 trillion in economy within our circumferences. We have all of the decisions. We make all these decisions on our children, their protection, our economy, who we trade with, who our ambassadors are, our relationship with Washington. All of these are now within our hands. And the reason why we came to that conclusion, and I talked about it prior, is because the United States, since its inception, has been one of apartheid, of racial supremacy that's entombed and ingrained in the citizenry so deep that there is no way that we can continue to operate without being oppressed by being just a simple minority. We have to move to the end game of being a special minority with entitlements of special rights. So this is where we're going. This is the most progressive place that we can be, as explained by Malcolm and explained by by Du Bois and explained by King in his latter years when he said that after he came back from Washington. that dream that he had then turned into a nightmare when he looked at our inner cities and the places where we lived at and seeing how decrepit and deprived that they were, and that there had to be another solution. And the solution is to move toward one of those power transference tools, which is a plebiscite, which transferred power to us. They had one in Scotland recently. They had one in Nigeria that divided Nigeria and Cameroon. They had one in Hawaii for the indigenous people of Hawaii who now have their rights, indigenous status. And this is what the advanced thinkers and our intellectuals and our internationalists are seeking to impart to those of our people that could have that could understand and could come to that type of understanding.
Wow. If you just tuned in, you've come center stage tonight. We're talking about the topic from Ferguson to Capitol Hill. We're talking about bringing an end to police brutality. What do we need to do to make that happen? We're also talking about putting laws on the books that specifically address police shootings, excessive force, police malfeasance, and the fact that nobody seems to be going to jail for them. If you have a question or a comment, get on the phone lines. Call us up at 347-850-8390, then press 1. We'd like to hear from you. We're going back to the phone lines. We're going to pick up area code 314-853. Good evening. You're on center stage.
Good evening, Miss Kheri, and to your guests.
And you know what? This is the second caller that I told that I was going to introduce to Mr. Ansari. Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I was just listening at, I guess it's your guest, talking about changing the laws. I don't think nobody wants any laws changed no more than I do. But, and I don't call this the United States. This is the divided states of America. Not America, America. America. What did you say?
No, I said I got to remember that. America, okay.
America, yeah, the divided state, the divided states of America. I'm saying, and let me say this. You know, a lot of people don't like what I say, this and that and other, and I'm more liberal than anybody. That's why I tell people, if you think I'm not, go to YouTube and put in the truth as I see it. Just put put it all in one word, the truth as I see it. I've been writing about, I'm not an educated person, but I write what I feel, what I see, and what I hear. And one thing in my first book, it said black people were brought to this country for 3 reasons: to serve, entertain, and keep their mouth shut. Now, I'm not telling you to keep your mouth shut. But when you open your mouth, it's a price that you're going to pay. If you think I'm kidding, ask Malcolm, ask Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, all of these black people. They will blow this country off the map before they change any laws in America. That's the way I feel. They will do that.
How do you address that?
As long as black people have been in the United States, some of us have been beaten up and beaten down so far, and so many times that we think that we're facing a giant. That this white man, or this Anglo, is super, and that he can never change. Well, I would like to explain to the brother that there's 45 million of us, that we have $1.2 trillion in economy, that we have the right to self-determination, and the only thing that's keeping us back from doing anything that we want to do is our own minds and our own selves.
See, let me stop you there. That's why I was asking you, Miss Kheri, about untreated trauma. If you look at some of the young people that's coming along, they don't even realize that they under trauma. And if you look at these young people that's coming, they're not even thinking about what you're talking about. They're into tattoos. They're into all of these rings in their nose. They're into hair. They're not thinking that. If their mind is not together, they can't do anything. In their mind, religion and politics is what got black folks in the shape that they're in. And when you look at the police. The police. Why would, if my son told me he wanted to be a police, I would tell him you don't want to go there. Know before you go. Why would you want to go in a situation where you got to, if your mother out here protesting, this white boy tell you got to bust her head. And the police, the black policemen ought to be ashamed of themselves. People talking about good policemen, is no such thing as a good policeman. Because anytime you allow white folks to shoot your children down and you don't open your mouth, that's a poor policeman. That's a poor policeman. And I see it all over. I talk to police. They, well, you wasn't there, I wasn't there. I say, well, what about them shooting that boy that many times? Well, you don't know what happened. When I hear that response, I know it won't be a change in America when it's coming from your black policeman. And I hope they understand it, where I'm coming from with that. What do you think about that?
Well, I totally agree with you. In fact, let me go a step further. Our black president, our black congressional Congress, our black policemen, our black attorney general are dancing to the tune of the other man, and he's looking the other way, because there's no way that this attorney general, black man, if I was in his position, I would have ordered the prosecutors in my department to draw up an indictment for Darren Wilson, and it had been the day after the state let him go. If I was the executive of this country, I would issue an executive order, and it would be addressed to the judiciary, and it would be addressed to the heads of the police departments concerning this issue of unmitigated charges in these and the rampant police killings, so that they would have a strong message from the leadership of this country that that's how it's supposed to go. If I was John Conyers of the House of Judiciary, he's head of all the judges, I would order that the judges all come to a meeting. All the federal judges come to a meeting, and they would hear me out on this issue, of police killings and what their duties are. So you're right. This is the reason why, brother. Hold it. This is the reason why we're talking about moving up out of this system, because this is the epitome, the best that America could offer: a black attorney general, a black president, and a black chairman of the House, of all the judges in the House of Judiciary, and they can't do a damn thing. So this is the reason why we are talking about getting up out of America and constructing our own nation state and territory where we have sovereign rights within inside America. And this is not only our international right, it's the constitutional right. In over 20 states, they have a right to succession. They have a right to succeed from the state. Then any time that the people, certain number of people in that state say, well, hey, we're not getting a fair shot in this state, we want to succeed, and the majority vote is held. There are some power transference tools that we can use that are legal, that we are not familiar with, that will get us out of that conundrum of having black policemen beat us over the head and a black chief executive sitting in issuing milquetoast orders, and an attorney general talking about we still investigating.
But I'm gonna say this: the only way you can do that, you got to be a racist, and black people cannot be racist.
A racist? You have to be race smart. We have to be smart. Yeah. Nobody's asking us to be. We're not asking to be racist. We're asking to be who we are. We are who we are. We're African Americans. So with that, we have a certain international right to control our own area because we're African Americans.
But you have to have. But you have to have knowledge to do this.
Brother, I'm an international lawyer. I'm a member of the bar. I'm a member of the bar in London. England. I go before I teach judges, lawyers, and prosecutors international law. We have colleagues. That other African Americans. There's only 3 of us in the country who are African American international lawyers. I'm one of the 3, but we have sufficient knowledge to argue this case. What I'm talking about is just strictly legal conventions and the letter of the law. I'm not talking about anything beyond the law. And so black people have to understand it's not racist to be your own self or to do for self. Everybody else is doing it. The Italians have Italy. Everybody has they have their own areas. The farmers got their own area. The agriculture got theirs. Defense and energy, they got their territory carved out. We have to carve out our own territory. That's not racist. That's intelligence.
I'm saying, sir, the only thing I'm saying is the people that run this country is racist. If you think that they're going to give up they live to satisfy anybody, you got another thing coming. You know,
right? Is that right? Well, we'll see, sir. We will see. I don't believe that they're that big and that bad. I don't believe that they can violate the human rights of 45 million people. I don't believe that they can win the arguments. I don't believe that they can have lawyers that can argue and change the facts in an international court like they do in an American court. So what I'm saying, dear brother, is that we have a winnable case, and we don't care what they think because we're not asking them to think about anything, brother. We're talking about taking this case outside of where they're thinking at, outside of where they're having a power at. What I've been talking about, brother, is that go-around thing. We're talking about going around them. We're talking about international courts.
Yes, and Kheri, I was going to ask the professor, maybe that will help the caller maybe understand where the international law aspect fits in. Professor, in a sense, does the United Nations say they make a ruling, they come to a conclusion, trial, and so forth, that in any given, whether it's use of lethal force or whatever it is, as related to the United States, if they make a ruling and then they hand that ruling down, isn't it true that because America is part of the United Nations, they're a member of that, they would have to abide by that? And wouldn't that, at that point, wouldn't that trump federal, state, and local law?
Absolutely. You got it. You got an A+. You got an A+, dear brother.
And that's what I wanted to call it to understand. We're with you, and we understand. But he's not talking about working within the same corrupt, racist confines that we're in. It is not perfect at the UN, but historically it has shown when you take your case and you win your case at the United Nations, guess what? The United States, I don't remember a time that anything has been levied on any country and they stayed a part of the United Nations and they did not have to abide by that. And that's what I was just trying to get clarification so you understand. We're not talking about going marching on Washington, trying to get the laws changed. We're taking this outside of the United States.
Absolutely. Very good, my brother. Very good.
You know, I understand everything you'll say. I love you. You're a black man. I'm black. I'm not going to fight and argue with you about anything. When I see this thing is bigger than what we think it is. And when I seen the way they shot when I seen the way they shot Kennedy and all of these people, like it wasn't just black folks killed Malcolm or Martin Luther King or Medgar Evers. See, I just see this thing is bigger than what you think it is. First thing, you can't do anything if you're ignorant. You got to teach where, like the young folks, I keep telling you, these young folks has got to learn this. Those are the ones, the future that we got to deal. We done got older. You looking at the young people that's coming up. If they don't have no smarts about themselves, where are they going? That's all I'm saying. Wouldn't you conclude that the majority of across this nation that are basically peaceful protesting, call it rioting if you want, are the youth?
Right. That's what I was going to say.
They're I understand what you're saying, but it has to start at some point, and I think you have valid concerns. But let me maybe give you a real quick example. Okay, remember 1991 Rodney King case. The video showed the 4 police officers that brutally beat him. Other officers stood by and so forth. Now, related to the United Nations and the United Nations Court, in 92, when they had the trial, the prosecutor and so forth that was trying to prosecute them, remember, there were 3 of the 4 that got acquitted. One of them got off because of a mistrial. Now, the Department of Justice stepped in a year later and filed federal charges against all 4, take them all to trial. 3 of the 4 actually get convicted. But only 2 of the 4 did jail time, and they didn't do any more than 30 months. And one of them, I think it was Stacey Kuhn, he made $4 million while he was in jail. Now, I said all that to say this. The Department of Justice stepped in only because there were riots and people wanted something. They wasn't going to get blood, but they wanted something. So they essentially slapped them on the wrist. Now, the United Nations could levy sanctions far greater than that. Now, we're with you. We know because of the last events over the last 12, 24 months that has happened in terms of police misconduct, we don't expect them to just wake up tomorrow and say, oh, I'm going to do right. I think as they're going more to the left of doing wrong, they're going to go even worse, and they're going to start getting more than just black folks. So I think the United Nations is a brilliant idea because other than us taking up arms and trying to go fight battle eye for eye, tooth for tooth, unless we go to the United Nations, I don't think it's very plausible to get change. It's going to take some time, but I think the professor that's on the line, he has the experience, and he's looking also at history. And I think we will get some movement. It's going to take time, but I don't think we should just put our hat in there. And the last thing I want to say, the Black Congressional Congress, understand something. Everybody keeps talking about presidential executive power, authority, and so forth. Congress has their own set of congressional executive power. Don't you understand that they could actually go into Ferguson and demand a congressional inquiry? But they're not. So they have their own. Anytime they want to. Why do you think people actually come before Congress and testify? Because somebody has either requested that they come or Congress has done a congressional inquiry, which trumps the state. But that's why Congress don't get involved. So we need to go to an outside source, because even the 26 black congressmen that we have, 12 of which are female, 14 of which are men, they're not doing jack. So we got to go to the United Nations.
Oh, definitely. Let me just add this. They are waiting for us to come. One day after the Ferguson verdict that let that murderer off, the head of the Human Rights Commission issued a statement, and in his statement he gave us the convention to sue them under. He said he gave us the basic principle. He said that there's a basic principle that the United States has violated, and that's the policeman's use of firearms that we all signed. The United States signed that there's a certain way, a protocol, in which police can only discharge and use their firearms. And we talked about a little bit of those rules. You can't use it when there's a fling, when you're not in imminent danger of death. So the United Nations Human Rights Commission has said that. So guess what court we're going to? We're going to the Human Rights Commission court. They've already told us the law. Everybody knows that the United States is in violation. It's only us that are suffering around because of our lack of understanding of how the international law works and our international rights and international courts, that we don't understand that this is where we should be at. They're waiting for us to come.
Okay. All right. I'm going to just switch over here right quick, what I'm saying. When I look, and I talked to you, Miss Kheri, and I'll go after this. I talked to you, Miss Kheri, about last week. You supposed to give me the number to this lawyer. Now,
well, guess what? Wait! Stop, old timer. Guess what? This is the lawyer that I was talking about.
Oh, is it? Well, let me say this. When I looked at Bill Cosby, here these women going back 40 years on Bill Cosby. Now, she talking about that she was traumatized. I don't think nobody has been more traumatized than black people. And what I was saying, we as black people need to get a class action lawsuit because nobody gave us any kind of therapy. Nobody gave us any kind. If these women can do to Bill Cosby, go back 40 years on him and get something out of him, black people need to file a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit against the United States government. Now,
Kheri,
what do you think about that?
Kheri, this is 314. Can I speak to that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a couple of things I want to speak to before that. You talked about training police officers and judges here in Ferguson.
Ferguson, yes.
Understand there are a lot of KKK has infiltrated a lot of police stations around the country. Also, I'm sure you guys are aware what happened November 2008. A lot of small municipalities that were predominantly white met and swore an oath to fight against the United States of America if this black man impeded on their sovereignty. So they already had sworn their oath less than 30 days after the election. Also, that being said, I happened to run across some conspiracies that were going on here. And the other thing I want to talk about is we can get something that's kind of like reparations. Remember what happened with the Japanese. If there are two things that can happen. Number one, the police officers, just like the Nazis, would be summoned and subpoenaed to verbally testify in this televised trial, this world trial. So the world and all the white people who are in denial would actually see their excuse. I thought the comb was a pistol. I thought his finger was a pistol. I thought his pants was a... When they begin to see, and the one thing that they all have is a script. They all have a script that they share with each other. You guys need to go to the police website. It is very Aryan. It is very Nazi-like. It's kind of eerie. If you go there, it's weird. But getting back to the point, you can find the United States of America can be found guilty, and they can be told that they need to get reparations. There are 2 ways or 3 ways you can go about that. My family got their 16 acres and a mule. I'm sorry, my grandfather they got theirs. But there are people who on record have not gotten theirs. There are people on record who have not been through the system slavery. There are people who families came over after slavery was over. There are people who were actually that are African American that were slave owners. Come on, let's call it what it is. So there's a way that you can identify those that have not gotten their right or their right to reparation or to be compensated for their losses. Then there is this thing that they did when they first came along. They said, hey, find your plot, sit down on it. Now, you talked about sovereignty. Native Americans did win sovereignty. The problem is their sovereignty is on the ground that doesn't grow anything. That's the problem I have with sovereignty, especially within the confines of this continent. That's my biggest issue.
That's not true. The Indians, especially those in California, are is one of the richest groups.
But that's from the casinos. You're right.
Exactly.
Those are the casinos. Exactly. But you and I both know that was a settlement. You and I both
that
know
was
a settlement because they didn't get paid for 27 years
really
after they won their case.
It wasn't really a settlement, and it's not really a fair comparison. And I know exactly where you're going to. You have a very vivid imagination and comparisons, but when you compare the Indians to us, that's a totally different negotiation because sovereignty is something that you negotiate for, and when you negotiate, when you have sovereignty, there's it depends how much sovereignty do you have, and we're not the Indians. There's less than 2 million Indians, and more than half of those Indians, people call Indians, are actually Caucasian because they changed the law. So you have maybe about 25% of that 2 million are actually full-blooded, quote-unquote, Indians, and the rest are mostly Caucasian admixture. And there's less than 2 million of those people. There's 45 million of us, and because of that, we actually, when the international lawyers looked at the issue of reparations, which is a very well-founded law, it's the UN General Assembly Resolution 6147. The United States signed reparations actually in 2005. So reparations is really legal, a legal remedy in the United States right now. Most people don't know that, but because it hasn't been enforced, we had to have an opportunity to teach many of our students about it. But when we looked at this issue of reparations, the threshold issue of self-determination in that, because there's 28 remedies under reparations, the first one being liberty. When we have a vote, a plebiscite, and we give ourselves liberty and a different status, just that act, we give our own selves reparations. Why? Because we have $1.2 trillion in economy in funds that come in and out of our hands. That makes us the 12th wealthiest entity of states in the entire world. We right, us in Mexico are right head and head as the 12th richest economy. We're ahead of Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, all the countries in Nigeria and Africa. We are very rich.
But can I ask you something?
Self-determination.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
We know that there's documentation of poor and undereducated and underemployed African Americans. Is it feasible for those individuals who do not have the degrees, I'm not talking about people like us, but those individuals to actually get compensation that, there's a cartoon that someone drew is beautiful. They talk about justice and they talk about equality. They have the tall man, the medium-sized man, and the little guy standing there, and the medium-sized guy barely can see over the fence, and the small guy can't see anything. But then they bring in these uneven ladders to put everybody on the same level. Is it feasible for these individuals who have not had that fair chance to actually receive economic compensation?
Well, yeah. The whole remedy of reparation is 28 remedies. Most of them are collective remedies. So which means that I don't per se get a check, but what we do get is restitution, whatever that's the money that will be coming to our national treasurer to restore us. And so the restoration, we have 4 remedies under reparations: restitution, rehabilitation, compensation, and a guarantee of non-repetition. These are all collective remedies. So the little guy, the medium-sized guy, and the intellectuals get the same thing. Now, in a society, when you have intellectuals, the little guy, and the middle guy, the people that usually become the commanders of the new society are the intellectuals, are the business people. And so it spreads out that way. But the remedy would be a collective remedy to all people and to our people as a collective.
I have one more question, and then I'm done. Now, what if we win and then we end up with a settlement for reparations within the United States of America? Could free education,
right,
guaranteed home loan,
right,
and the guaranteed business loan, as long as the business plan is sound and it has nothing to do with credit, could those 3 entities be considered? That, to me, that's how I see chance.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Those are the types of things that you do. That's restitution. That's how to restore us from this decrepit understanding and level of economy that we are at right now. This is how to make us to lessen that disparity gap by giving out microloans, free education, free health care. This is what our new nation would. Those are the things that our new nation would definitely have to do, because there's a lot to do to restore us, to rehabilitate us, and to put us into that economic self-sustaining mode so that we have a guarantee of non-repetition of oppression. So, those are exactly the type of things. You got it right, Sister, the type of things that we, as intellectuals and scholars and experts, that would be our job, would be to implement those things: education, health, welfare, and so that we would never be oppressed again.
Okay, y'all, we're going back to the phone lines. We're going to pick up area code 314-381. Good evening, you're on Center Stage.
Hello, Kheri.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, you?
Conversation. Blacks in America is not going to get reparations from the United States government for the simple reason is that they're coming from a position of weakness, trying to go up against a position of strong. You know, I heard the brother mention about the $1.1 trillion of spending power, and you compare that with Nigeria. Nigeria does not measure its economic strength by spending power. It measures its economic strength by its gross domestic product. That is, what it produces. Saudi Arabia, too. If you're looking at blacks' spending power based on what they make working for somebody else, and blacks, out of the 1.9 million businesses blacks have, they hire less than 1 million people, actually around 900,000. So who are they working for? Then if you made that move, how long do you think those who you are working for to obtain that $1.1 trillion would keep you on the payroll?
Good question. Okay. That $1.2 trillion, that is, we looked at that in comparison with the GDP of Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and it's greater than Nigeria's and Saudi Arabia's. Now, it's true that we work for someone else, and that's the beauty of this thing.
Wait a minute. Hang on for a second before you go too far. Blacks' $1.2 trillion in spending power. Let's say it's $2 trillion. It does not equate to producing and manufacturing. They just work for somebody. And why would you? And think about this. Wait a minute. Hang on for a second. Just think about this. How long do that dollar stay in the black community? Do they not cash a check on Friday and come Monday they got to start it all over again. That means between Friday when
missed the context.
Wait a minute, let me get this. I'm gonna let you have it. Let me say this: when they get paid, they give that money right back to where they got it from. So, what good would it do for an entity that you're going to go begging and demanding reparation for to give you more money when they're going to get it back? They already got it. Why would they give you something that they're already going to get back from you?
Because you went down the wrong tangential path to understanding the economy that we're talking about constructing. We're not talking about having the same political context. The threshold, the first thing that we must do is repair ourselves. That's liberty. So once we give ourselves liberty, that gives us boundaries. That gives us self-determination in our areas.
But where is this going to happen at?
Hold it, brother. I gave you opportunity to trace this dollar. Okay, so now after we have boundaries around our territory, and that dollar is in our territory, it'll go just like it did prior to integration. It'll go from me to our grocer, from the grocer to the barber shop, from the barber shop to our car repairman. It would go to the house that we live in for the maintenance of it. This is all within our boundaries. So now that dollar doesn't escape. That's the beauty of self-determination, is the fact that we keep that dollar in our own area. Now,
all right, hold it right there before you go too further, because I can't write all this down.
Okay. Just self-determination. Self-determination gives us
Let's talk about these boundaries you're talking about. So you're saying that blacks in America, which we know this ain't going to happen, going to cordon off an area. Wait a minute, let me
just get it out.
Well, wait a minute, let me finish. I'll listen to you now. First of all, the Constitution of the United States does not permit that. It does not permit a sovereign to exist.
That's
all right. Well, while you talking the next time, I'm gonna pull it up for you. But you saying that blacks? Well, let me finish. Let me finish. I listen to you. You want somebody to listen to you, but you don't want to listen to somebody.
I'm just.
If you don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine. But you talking about blacks in America is going to have a separate entity where they exist.
Exactly.
At the same time, they're going to be working for whites who's outside of that entity.
Maybe some of them will.
Wait a minute. All right, you started off with $2 trillion. So how much are you going to have in this entity?
We have one.
You started off with $2 trillion outside of it. So how much you going to have in it?
Context, because you forgot the boundaries again. That $2 trillion, I was just say that $2 is inside of our area.
Where are they going to get it from?
It's inside. Okay, let's look at one of the most difficult areas to do that, and one of the areas I'm working with now. Let's look at Chicago. Okay, Chicago is run as a 4 or 5 million people city. Okay, in Chicago there's a huge African American presence on the south side and one on the west side. The law says in Illinois that 200,000 votes you can succeed from the state of Illinois. So that's wrong. Because the law permits that. The law permits succession. So that's why I'm saying you're wrong on the law. 2, international law. Once we say, do you want to be recognized as an African Native American? Yes or no? If we say yes, and the majority of us say yes, now international law now says that we have a right to the territory that we're on. Now it's up to negotiation, because the territories that we live on, some of them are solid African American areas and some of them are mixed African American areas. So now we go into negotiation, because the law says that we have a right to succeed into our own areas. That's what the American law says. And the international law says for indigenous people that they have the right to and the resources to the areas in which they occupy.
All right. Where can we read this law at?
The draft, I teach this. So the draft, the first one is the draft.
It has to be a law that's already established. So where where you saying that y'all going to say? Wait a minute, hang on for a second. Wait a minute. You said you talk about secession. You talk about the state of Illinois seceding from the United States.
Not only the state of Illinois, about 20 other states. At least 20 other states have secession.
Well, wait a minute. Hang on for a second. Just don't go too fast. We don't want to lose nobody. So you saying that the state of Illinois is going to secede from the Union? Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say that. I said the black people in the state of Illinois can secede from the state of Illinois.
They can. Well, yeah, they can. The black people in the state of Illinois is free to leave Illinois anytime they get ready.
I didn't say leave Illinois. I said succeed.
Well, what does secede mean?
It means to have the authority. To have the authority.
Do what?
To have the authority over your area. To succeed.
Hang on for a second. So what area? Wait a minute. What area are you talking about? Within the state of Illinois, or where?
I just explained it, so I'll do it again. There's 2 areas in Chicago, because it's one of the most difficult. So I'll go with this most difficult thing, not Ferguson. Ferguson's easy, because it's already a majority. But in Chicago, the African Americans are not the majority. But they're indigenous people, and under Illinois law, they have the right to succeed.
Wait a minute. What Illinois law? You talking about Illinois state statutes?
Succession law. Write this down.
Illinois state statutes.
Right, Illinois state statutes.
All right, I'm gonna look that up. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Look it up because I already have. Okay, succession law. I don't say anything now. Say lawyers only say things that they know about because in that way.
I understand. So go ahead. So you're saying that blacks in Illinois is going to succeed?
To 20 other states as well.
Well, if you're talking about Missouri, I can tell you now, blacks in Missouri are not going to do that. But go ahead, sir.
You're so negative. Anyway.
No, we ain't gonna.
Yeah, I know. You stay on the plantation. That's what they said.
No, I don't stay on no plantation. Don't see. I haven't talked nasty to you. I've been trying to. I'm trying to be specific.
Professor and Pianki, what I was basically trying to get through, I was trying to see, I'm asking Professor, maybe it'll clarify the succeeding issue. Like Native Americans on Native American reservations, where they're within the state, they may even own land within the state, but the confines of the reservation is something that they govern themselves, where they have their own tribal laws, they have their own legislation, they have all of that, but it's within the confines of that reservation.
You know why that is, don't you?
Anything like that, Professor?
You know why the Indians have their own places? Because it's spelled out in the United States Constitution. Indians are a sovereign nation recognized in the Constitution.
United States Constitution in our wherewithal, but it's not. But in any case, it's sort of like that, except that indigenous law is an innate law that inheres to the human being because of his historical story. Where he come from, whether he was the first people or what he was like our type of indigenous people, which is called Atatan. Atatan is people that have been captured or forced into another state and have resided in that state over a time until they are autonomous, until they are a distinct member of that state. Then they get this, what inheres to them, to their human essence, because every human has to have a nationality and have a place. What inheres to that indigenous person is that territory in which that occurs. Now, what I was talking about as far as succession, that's the political. That doesn't have anything to do with the innate human historical rights. Those are just our political rights under civil and political conventions and under the Declaration of Human Rights, that we have a right to political choice of self-determination under international law. And what I was saying, that in Illinois and in Michigan and in about 20 other states, the United States has a succession law for those who have made up their political minds because of something or another to succeed from that particular state. not from the United States, but from that particular state.
Well, you know the United States don't abide by international law. Matter of fact, the United States did not even sign on to.
Oh my
the United
goodness.
States did not even. Well, sir, I didn't talk out when you was talking like that.
I know, but brother.
Would you let me say what I'm going to say?
Yeah.
Now, the United States did not even sign on to the Declaration of Genocide until just recently. When it was passed in 1948, the United States did not sign on to it. So international laws and so on, so on, so on. This Congress does not respect them before the United States Constitution, unless they do so by a special act.
That's not true.
Oh, boy.
There's nothing in the Constitution that
now,
says
I
that.
can't find anything under Illinois state statutes about sovereignty and secession. Can you please spell that out so the listeners can go to it?
SCESSION. It's the Illinois state statute, succession.
What chapter? What chapter? What article and what chapter on the Illinois state statute?
41, but just Google.
I tell you what, I have Google. And for the benefit of the doubt, could you be on Kheri's next show, and could you have the information so we could directly go to it, please?
Google it right now to come up. Google Illinois.
It's not coming up, sir.
Succession statute. Or Illinois, put Little Egypt. Little Egypt was the area of southern Illinois.
That was with Charles Cohen, and he's in jail right now. So. Can you please?
I'm talking about 1920. This was
okay.
In 1920, there was a secession movement.
I thought you were talking about Cairo, Illinois.
Yeah, it's near Cairo. Cairo was part of Little Egypt. Okay, and that was in 1920. They had the first secession movement in Illinois. So Google Little Egypt succession and see if you get an Illinois.
Yeah, Kheri.
We're gonna go to another caller. We'll come back to you when you tell us what's in Google.
I'm looking it up right now.
Actually, this is 314. I found the 10 movements to succeed from the United States.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Say what?
10 movements to succeed from the United States.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's it.
What is it again?
10 movements to succeed from the United States.
You're right, and I found it too. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there you have it, PhD. Now you
I've heard it. I'll read it and I'll tell you what I think about it.
Okay.
We're going to
I'm not new to this, but I'm not new.
About it. Boy.
Area code 901-299. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Hey, this is Kheri. How you doing? This is Brother Ron. I was calling. I just made it in time. I've been listening to the back and forth going on the last, 20 minutes. And I think it's very interesting. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I thought I'd like to add, this is the problem right here. I mean, we repeating all the bad habits from 50 years ago. We are doing bad habits. We're not thinking about the good habits from 50 years ago or 100 years ago or 200 years ago. We're repeating the wrong stuff. And I see all this die in and sit in. They want you to die in their system. That's why they set the system up the way it is. It's a genocidal machine, murder machine for people of color. They want you to die in so they can make money off of you. I mean, this is the problem because we had 45 years ago yesterday, Fred Hampton tried to do the same thing that brother was talking about in Chicago. Fred Hampton, had he lived, would have unified the street gangs, the Rainbow Coalition in Chicago, would have had the people behind him to do the things, to succeed. And they wouldn't let him succeed. He was just 21 years old. Now, Jeff Ford, I'm sure how powerful it is. Jeff Ford had the largest street gang. He was able to swing Chicago for Nixon. Matter of fact, there's a story where Nixon actually invited him to the White House for swinging Chicago in his favor. That's how powerful when black folks are unified behind one idea. And we got to go back to Cali House, reparations movement, or the Exodusters, who was going towards the Midwest, starting Point, Missouri, leading towards Kansas and whatnot. We don't know our history that well. We got to make the analog history more pliable to the digital babies, to the digital generation. Because Malcolm X already told you what the time was. Listen to the message from the grassroots. What Obama pulled on Monday is nothing different what Kennedy did 50 years ago with the Big Six. They want to control everything. They want to finance everything. And we're in a cultural war. We're in a psychological warfare. We don't even control one media outlet that control our narrative. We don't control our economics. You got to control your economics and education They don't control charter schools. The citizens control charter schools. Why would Bloomberg want to be mayor of New York? He's a billionaire. It's not about money. It's about power. It's about controlling and setting their agenda. Until black folks can get in a position to set their own agenda through economics and education, forget about guns. If we don't got an economic game together, we can't run a real warfare. Wars cost money. You got to have finance. You know, so we got to start thinking on that level. The police ain't going to do what they're doing in Ferguson to Jewish people in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. They ain't going in there messing with no rabbis and no little Jewish kids. They know better than that because they got their economic game together. Until black folks can do that, Marcus Garvey already gave us something. He said, you know what, before we can do anything, we got to believe in ourselves. A lot of us don't believe in ourselves. We think white supremacy cannot be defeated. White supremacy is not Mother Nature. Anything man-made can be destroyed. That's all I got to say. I'm saying, just look at the history. Look at the right stuff. We repeating the bad habits. Look at the good habits. Repeat the good habits.
Well, the speaker's right. Somebody from Ferguson talked about the black people in this state not complying or being progressive. He's right. They believe in white supremacy here. That's one of the major problems. That's why Ferguson is even in the situation is in. And these are the realities. It's like
well,
I talked
that's
about
not
the
reason why Ferguson is in the situation it's in, ma'am. I live here, been here for all my life, and that's not the reason.
About voting. I'm talking about voting and utilizing your rights. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's something different.
All
let me tell you this.
Board,
Go ahead,
that makes no sense.
I want to say one thing about the free slaves during the Civil War. General Sherman, the idea for 40 acres and a mule came from free Africans. General Sherman went to these free Africans. They formed a committee. He asked them, what do y'all want? Well, we want 40 acres and a mule. Now we talking about voting. We go from ownership to being disenfranchised and citizens that don't even respect your human rights. See, the free, newly free, enslaved Africans, whatever, they knew something that we forgot. We moved from our land to the plantations up north. Now we got no base. Everything, these white folks came over to this country for land. Everybody came over for land. Every revolution is about land and bread, okay? And we talking about just voting and sitting next to them at the lunch counter. That's a problem.
Well, I was reading this, and this is what you're talking about is where you have organized governments, which was made possible to organize because of their state constitutions. And these organized governments are talking about succeeding, but none of them have. But you talking about black people. At first, black folks are not going to do that. Now, if you're talking about a few of you, like the New African, with what's the brother's name, Ogletree, that died, and Allen Brown and them, they've been trying to talk about they want 5 southern states. Can you imagine going down to the state of Mississippi telling white folks we want this land? Come on. Even the blacks that's down there will do that.
Well, I'm saying we don't need to repeat what they're doing. What we messing up is we want to be more white than white people. We don't need to repeat. We got bigger ideas.
No, I don't think so. I think that the people that have these ideas.
We already separated.
Well, the people that have these ideas, I say this: go ahead and do that, so we can stand and see how it works out for you. If it works out for you, then I'm sure that others would join in.
But
you know what? In terms of trying to gain stability, socioeconomic, progressive, and I think step by step control. Yes, we don't have it, and I believe in Dick Gregory what he says. Most black folks are under an illusion because they think they live in a community, but they actually live in a neighborhood because the community you control pretty much everything coming and going, your bank, your police, all of that. That's not the advent in the average black community. Now, I can say this. If we want to take an approach to start, then we do have to have some kind of a economic base. So maybe I help Cousin Joe and my neighbor get an automotive shop going. And then we can take a small pool of people, maybe the majority, 10, 20, 30% of people at my church or at my community center. We only go to him to get our cars fixed. And so that's what I'm saying. There's got to be a way, inroads of some of what, I do believe in some of what Bill Cosby said in terms of pull our bootstraps up, but there has to be other inclusion with that too. But we as a people, a radio station, if we want a radio station, we know the FAA and all those, and they're pretty much against mainly any real progressive black-owned radio station. But guess what? Enough money, and we do the right legal maneuvering, we can get what we want. And then we start supporting our own. And that's what I've tried to start doing. In my neighborhood, I get very good tradesmen and so forth. I do not deal with white businesses unless I have to. And so that's a start. And I think if we just take it from the perspective of, we don't have the 40 acres and a mule right now, but we do have some brothers and sisters that we do know do quality work. They're in radio and talk. Center stage. I'm going to use this for an example. There should be no way on God's green earth we have Sister Kheri, we got Brother Ron, we have other shows, and I'm not saying you are not, but I take I call it my slush fund money, and I donate it to these grassroots organizations because nothing is for free. And I'm not going to be able to get on the WVON here in Chicago unless I got some money. And that's even to just put together some kind of progressive movement, because if I don't have money, that black radio station is not going to let me on. So I think we should support what we do know. And my mother used to always say, 6 and 1 half dozen and the other. Let's just try and take it in a small baby steps. Let's support the black businesses that we do know that are worthy of our dollars, and then start to pull our money away. And then eventually, maybe we can then be able to be producers and not just consumers.
And you're
I
right.
agree with you on that. He's absolutely right. I agree with him on that.
Let me give you the macro, the game plan, because the game plan is we're one vote away from $1.2 trillion. The game of politics is a game of consensus and majority, which means that one vote. If you put an X, when we ask you a question, do you want to be recognized as an African Native American? If you put an X in that box, and we count those up, and we have more X's than nays, then we have $1.2 trillion in economy within side of our economic and political sphere right then, at that point. So
I don't agree with that, sir. I really don't.
You don't understand law, but that's okay.
That's saying that every African American black person in this country is going to go along with that.
Can I get finished, brother? Just 1 second. International law says that. Dr. Mustafa Ansari didn't say that. I didn't make this up. International law and American law is what is called democracy. This is based upon the majority vote. The reason why we're in problem big problem is because we're in a simple minority category, which means the majority we always lose in a majority state. But when we vote to become our own sovereign, at that point we are $1.2 trillion richer. As far as a broadcast license, let me give you an idea of where we're going with this, because this is definitely a giant step. As soon as that vote comes in, those X's in the box go in, what we do is we file for an FCC broadcast license, which gives us a minimum of about 4 national TV stations. And the reason why is because the indigenous people have set aside. They have special rights. So they have set aside. They have set aside for economics. They have subsidies. The people called Indians and the people who are indigenous people have set aside and set aside licenses because indigenous people have to preserve their culture and they have to be given expression. So we automatically get this. This is the most powerful way to do this, and the easiest way to have a bloodless revolution, a change, is by doing this strictly in conjunction with the law. And the law says in any democratic society, and this is how societies change, they change by votes. This is why we're voting all the time. So what we do is we construct a vote among ourselves, and we put an X in that box, and things will change. It's real simple when you get down to it. This is not all that complicated. It's just out of our intellectual research time.
He's talking about what's equivalent to a census. Every 10 years we do a census. It's the same thing. That's why documentation is so important. Now, he's right. You're right, not all, but if enough do decide that they are in this group and they petitioned for sovereignty, it can be done. Now, it's also true that a majority amount of African Americans not only don't participate in the census, but don't do a lot of things that are really involved with our the way our government works. One question I have for you is, one of the things that we did do for us people that we provided sovereignty outside of the United States was the Jewish community in the 1960s. When we decided to take these Jews who were homeless, that were just pulled out from Germany, and took them over to what was then Palestine, we began what we call to this day terrorist. That move, they didn't hit us before that move, us deciding to take these people who wanted sovereignty and to give them their original land that they left thousands of years ago, we started a mess that caused September 11 and on and on and on. So to me, to think outside, what country is going to give away their land, even if we talk about external, without us starting a situation like we have to this day with the POL and all of the, decade after decade after decade of these people saying, you brought these people here and you took our property away from us.
But I would say this. I think we stretching it too far, right? We're going to play in the system. Let's play by their rules, right? It was 50 years ago. Elijah Muhammad was buying land from the Klan in Georgia. Marcus Garvey, it wasn't that long ago where black folks were actually buying land from Germany. If we can't get it by war, let's get it through economics. You look at what happened to Yahweh being Yahweh. See, the problem with us is that we can't do our economics on our own. We can't help a separatist group within our community or in our nation, whatever you want to call it. Because we all got to be connected. The reason why they messing with Bill Cosby now, because he disconnected himself from the community. He attacked the wrong people. You don't attack the black working class folk. That's one thing people need to learn from Marion Barry. He never forgot where he came from.
But that's who he should have attacked, was the middle class and not the.
Right, he should have attacked the middle class, right? But he messed up,
right.
And that's why he paid for it 10 years later, because he separated from his base. When we try to do things, we got to be able to connect with our people so we can have some backup.
Well, blacks can buy land today if they want to. Nobody's stopping blacks from buying land. Now,
we don't know how
this sovereignty.
We think it's like we got to do this new republic stuff. We don't have to do it. Just buy stuff. We just pull our resources together and buy this stuff.
Well, it's nothing wrong with people having these ideas. I've heard these ideas before, but I want to know when you do your secession, what happens to your citizenship? You going to denounce your citizenship?
No, you have an additional citizenship, just like most of the Jews.
Like the Jews.
They have dual citizenship. Secondly, we don't have to buy land. When I went to Africa,
hang on about the citizenship, about the dual citizenship.
United States. We don't have to buy land because we have land rights. We have land rights in the United States, and we have land rights in Africa. So we'll end up with we're entitled to 3 different passports: the American passport, the passport whatever passport that we decide on after the plebiscite here, and we're entitled to a 18th country passport along the western area of Africa, because we have the right to return.
Well, according to the United States State Department, if you seek citizenship in another country, you a lawyer?
Yes.
Well, I don't think I want you to. Do you make those type of outbursts in the court?
Yes.
All right. Well,
I am a zealous advocate.
All right.
I am a zealous advocate.
I can hear the gavel banging. I can hear the gavel banging now. But this is what I'm saying. Is that this country...
in the
order in the court. Order in the court.
We have a certain protocol.
Order in the court. Now, as I was saying before, you talking about these passports. The United States State Department, Congress, only recognize dual citizenship with only a few countries, Israel being one. But African countries, they do not recognize. You go to their website and you can read. Go to the State Department website. they do not recognize dual citizenship with other countries. Matter of fact, African countries don't even recognize dual citizenship. That's one of the reasons why it comes.
That's not even true. That's not true.
Well, it is because.
I heard Ghana, you can't.
Well, wait a minute. Let me finish.
I know some black
because
folks
my wife is
moved to Africa. They moved to Ghana.
Well, my wife is Ghanaian. My wife is Ghanaian. I know it very well. Now, here it is. This is how it works. If you seek the citizenship of another country, Mister, will you let me say what I have to say?
Because you just keep
I don't understand.
Are you afraid that I'm going to tell people something you don't want them to know?
I'm not talking about afraid, but you just.
Well, let me finish saying what I say, and I'll let you talk.
You keep misstating the law.
Then just say you don't agree. That's why I give references and leaks. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Kheri. Now, Kheri, let me tell you how it is. Kheri, if you go to the State Department's website, they would tell you that the United States does not recognize dual citizenship with some countries. And another point, if you even seek citizenship to another country, they have the right to denounce your citizenship here in the U.S. So these things are not as easy as they say. Pardon me?
Now let him respond to that.
All right.
Mr. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Respond to what he just said in terms of
he only talks when I'm talking.
Well, it's a misstatement. It's a misstatement of the law. Under international law, you have the right to citizenship, and you have the right to hold on to, especially our people who have been deprived of relationships with other Africans. We have a right to a dual citizenship. It's not a discriminatory thing that the U.S. State Department can even do. It can't say that certain countries are okay to have dual citizenship with, and certain countries are not okay to have dual citizenship with. We can have dual citizenship with any country in the world. Any country in the world. This is just a misstatement of the law. And so what I'm talking about is not only dual citizenship, but we have three citizenships. It depends upon your particular circumstance. The reason why we would have three citizenships, the Indians have two. They have dual citizenship. Most of the Jews have, and most of the Europeans, especially wealthy Europeans that travel, French and German and all that, they still have Korean. They still have citizenship with their own country. They have dual citizenship. We have a right to have a citizenship with those countries in Africa in which we came from because of our particular situation, and this has been discussed. This has been discussed in the African Union as well as in the hall of the human rights experts in the United Nations. We have a right to to those relationships and that citizenship. So that was just a plain misstatement of the law.
Well, let me read this to you. It says here, the United States government remained disdainful of dual citizenship for some time. To this day, candidates for U.S. citizenship through naturalization are forced to renounce their previous citizenship at the United States naturalization ceremony. The renouncing of one's previous citizenship is part of the oath that new U.S. citizens must take, and failing to honor that oath could result in the loss of citizenship in the United States. United States don't recognize dual citizenship.
Number one.
Now, don't argue with me. Argue with them. I'm not saying that.
Well, I just tell you what you just made a mistake.
I just read what they said.
Okay, we're not new citizens. We're old citizens, so that doesn't apply. Secondly, naturalization depends upon where you was born and what country allows you to have that particular status. Third, that doesn't, and most importantly, that doesn't pertain to us because we're not new citizens.
I do know this much. Bruce Lee is the best example of dual citizenship outside of Jews. there are people who actually might have two parents from two different countries that have the right to have dual citizenship, especially if they were born abroad, like if they were born in Germany or something. They do have that ability to do, but they can only choose to vote and be a jury. They can only choose one country to actually activate their rights.
Okay. Well, you can activate your right. There was members of Congress, United States Congress, who became members of the Knesset. So you have to when you do that, you become a congressperson or an official of a different state than your original state. You have to notify the United States when you do that. Other than that, there are no restrictions on us being dual citizenship. So to help this brother understand that we don't belong to the United States, or necessarily have a United States authority over us at all times. We have a right to, number one, we have a right to our own citizenship, which is a distinct citizenship within inside the United States. Then we have a right to have a dual citizenship with another country, in this case Africa or even one of the Caribbean countries, because these countries, we have a right under the Convention on the Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Under cultural rights, we have a right to preserve our culture. So if there was something that about 6 months ago that one of our brothers, Brother Mostef, couldn't come back into the United States, these are that's not true. We have the right to travel. We have the right to foreign citizens. We have the right to another citizenship. These are misstatements of international law and American law.
Well, here's another site. Here's another site that says that the United States does not recognize dual citizenship. U.S. Department of State. Now, what African country are you talking about that would give you citizenship?
One, you can be just a citizen of Liberia right now.
Now I agree with you there. Negroes are the only ones that can become citizens of Liberia.
You can be a citizen of Ghana as well.
I knew you was going to say that country. Now that's the one I know very, very well. Like I say, my wife is a Ghanaian.
It's a country I know very, very well as well. So we can talk about Ghana.
Right. Now, under dual citizenship in Ghana's 1992 Constitution of the Republic of Ghana. Keep talking. I'm going to read this out to you here in a minute.
We got to close out. It's been a very interesting conversation.
I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
Now, I just want to say, these are some of the sharpest people I know, and I love them all. But if we are trying to come to a resolve or find a way to make change, and the seven minds on the show can't agree in a simple conversation and can't agree to listen to each other, it's going to be hard for us to come up with a resolve for the problems that we have in our community.
Not true, brother. Not true. Political discourse is like this. When you get everybody that's on the line now are serious in one way or not resolving our problems. Most of us agree that we have to go beyond the United States. There's one or two of us that want to quote the United States and the Secretary of State and everything that the United States says. Okay, that's good. So at the end of all this discussion back and forth, you know how we resolve it, brother? We have a vote.
Well, we can go deeper than that. Why don't we?
Hang on, let me give you citizenship in Ghana. In Chapter 3, Section 8.
It's your more respect factor for each person that's talking. Sorry for talking over you, man. I'm done.
All right. In Chapter 3, Section 8, Paragraph 2, in Ghana's 1992 Constitution, it says here, a person who becomes a citizen of Ghana by registration and immediately after the day on which he becomes a citizen of Ghana is also a citizen of another country shall cease to be a citizen of Ghana. unless he has renounced his citizenship of that other country. So, sir, I don't understand what you're talking about. Now listen, this is not Bianchi saying this. I'm reading it out of the book. Don't argue with me.
Let him respond, and we got to get out of here.
Well, the United States Constitution was ratified in 1889.
Yes, let him respond. We got to get out of here.
The situation was changed in 2005.
Let's do this. I believe that you can have a consensus to say do A, B, and C. You don't have to buy into one approach. To me, the best war strategy is that you have your right flank, you have your left flank, you have your advanced troops, and then you have your fallbacks, you have your strong and your weak. To me, it's not about everybody agreeing. It's about people using their best strengths to achieve their objectives.
I agree with you.
Me, myself,
I agree with you.
I utilize social media and meetings. Me, myself, I have internal relationships and is able to do things. I can't be on the forefront because of who I am. But I'm able to do things behind the scene. We all have a responsibility. The best thing that we can do is still talk about this. It is a big issue, and we need to look at solutions, and we have to accept the fact that marching is not going to resolve the problem. We have to accept the fact that education, getting involved, community involvement, not only that, but getting the international community involved is all relevant. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years of taking a people and destroying the spirit and their soul. They say it takes one day to break a glass, but my golly, it takes forever to put it back together. We've had less than 200 years to try to get our act together. So that's what I'm talking about. Let's all come together, brothers, and let's say we're going to leave here, we're going to agree to disagree, but we're not going to stop the fight.
You're right, and I just don't like for error or information to get out. It says here the 1992 Constitution of Ghana was approved at the referendum held on April 28, 1992, and promulgated by the Constitution of the Fourth Republic of Ghana. Promulgation Law, 1992. It was the last amended in 1996 by the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana Amendment Act, 1996. As I said before, my wife is Ghanaian. Such a beautiful person she is. And I know Ghana's constitutional laws very well.
We got to get out of here. Final word is going to be to Mr. Ansari to respond to what you said, Bianchi. And secondly, Mr. Ansari, if you would tell people how to help the cause or further the cause that you're working on.
Yeah, well, the solution as to police brutality, our economic problems, our educational deprivation, is to move out of into our own sovereign circles, and in our cities, and in the United States, and in the United States as a whole. This is easily achievable. Right now, we have about 15 lawyers working on this. We have human rights, African American human rights activists all over the United States that we're training to be UN human rights defenders and UN human rights monitors, so that they can monitor the situation. So, and as to the case involving police brutality, within the next month or so, we'll put up an 800 number, because we are going to catalog all the cases across the nation, because we don't believe in anything that's going to come down from the Department of Justice. And at that point, we will be moving into either probably into the Human Rights Commission in Geneva for a resolution. The resolution won't be quick, but it will be lasting. And at that point, understand that we have additional rights that we can adhere to. Now, our website, where we teach human rights courses, we teach UN human rights defenders, U.S. monitors. We train police officers. We teach judges, lawyers, and prosecutors how to incorporate American law into international law. And that's at www.humanrightscourses.com. We have a burgeoning TV station, which we do seminars for judges, lawyers, and prosecutors and activists, and that is www.humanrightstv.org. So that's humanrightscourses.com, and you'll see the syllabus, not the syllabus, but the highlights of the defender course, which we certify human rights defenders, and the monitoring course, when we certify monitors on that particular site. That's humanrightscourses.com.
Wow.
And,
okay,
and you know, I could tell you, give you a latest report on Ferguson. You know, we have state legislatures who have about 13 bills that's going to appear on the General Assembly floor when they reconvene in January. One, some of the ones which I've been texting to you, Kheri, in particular, the redefining the definition of deadly force. They're going to have sort of like a national registry for police who aggrieve the civil rights of citizens, that their name go into. It'd be sort of like tagging them like you tag a felon. We're working to change the ethnic makeup of the police department. With these police departments, these cities that's 99% black, well, the police department, fire department, public works, city hall, and the school district should reflect the population they serve. And there's movements in order to put things in place to do that.
Wonderful.
And some other things.
Wonderful. Listen, y'all, this has been a very spirited conversation. I like to say I learned a lot. I hope you all did as well. We do this each and every Friday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Central, 9 to 11 Eastern. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at centerstageradio@yahoo.com. And if it's something that goes along the lines of what we normally do, we'll definitely consider it. Listen, y'all, we're going to get out of here before they cut us off. But listen, thank you so much, Mr. Mustafa. I'm sorry for stopping by. We appreciate you so much. And Ron Hurd with We All Be Radio right here on Blog Talk Radio. Thank you for stopping by tonight. Okay, guys, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You took my son away from me. You know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate. You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this type of level where they feel like they don't got nothing to live for anyway.
I might clown, but right now, this one's for Mike Brown, so pipe down. We gotta stop all the rioting in the streets. We ain't doing nothing but proving we animals to police. Another child dies, another mother cries. Another neighborhood left with a whole bunch of whys. Why did they pursue him? Why they had to shoot him? But I don't think that the answer is everybody looting. Or forget that cop, he deserves state time. They let Zimmerman off, this cop ain't learned from Trayvon. I'm just sitting here dropping a little tear of knowledge. Cause Mike Brown ain't even lived to see a day at college. He would've started soon, that there's an empty seat in class. All because of these demons hiding behind a badge. So screw that badge, screw your protection. And screw that law, carry your weapon. But some of these stores y'all looting is black owned. I know it's for a cause, but some of them still have families at home. It's not a black or white thing, it's about abusing the law. I can't imagine Dorian's face when he saw Mike fall. My tears wetting the page while I'm writing this. I know y'all so in tune, if you not, why you fighting it? Just let go. Let your heart beat and never lose control. And God rest his soul, cause I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown. He represent us all, we from a similar town. Walk them similar streets, we got similar police. So how I know I ain't gonna end up under a similar sheet. So I am Mike Brown, cause I'm out here with my homie. I'm just walking my block, man, everybody know me. So I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown, homie, I am Mike Brown. I am Mike Brown.
He shot again, and once my friend felt that shot, he turned around and he put his hands in the earth, and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn, and he fired several more shots.
I am Mike Brown, I am Sean Bell. I am Larry Davis bleeding in my dingy cell. I am Angelo Clark, I am Oscar Grant. I am Dante Price doing what you others can't. I am Bo Morrison, Melvin Lawhorn. I am the voice of these people cause they are long gone. Let's go behind the badge, fall behind the beat. Behind the politics, they wonder why we don't trust police. They wonder why we carry nines on us. They look for drugs but shoot for anything they find on us. I am Justin Sitt fighting for my life kicking. Slowly dying cause police said I look suspicious. We are all of these people in so many ways. I am Raymond Allen left to die for 2 days. I just bought a new hoodie, guess I'm Trayvon. I am Dwayne Brown, lay down, try not to die. On the halls I feel my heart beating slower, listen. And all you dealing with is maybe gonna lose your pension. You might not notice this, but this just a new form of lynching. I got my hands up, but still I see that cop inching. The mystery of this, I think I never know. Why they had to shoot him down, couldn't just let him go. The mystery of this, I think I never know. Why they had to shoot him down, couldn't just let him go. I am Mike Graham, he represent us all, we from a similar town. Walk them similar streets, we got similar police, so how I know I ain't gonna end up under a similar sheet. So I am Mike Graham, cause I'm out here with my homie. I'm just walking my block, man, everybody know me. So I am Mike Graham, I am Mike Graham, I am Mike Graham, homie, I am Mike Graham, I am
you
Mike Graham.
You took my son away from me, you know how hard it was for me to get him to stay in school and graduate. You know how many black men graduate? Not many. Because you bring them down to this type of level where they feel like I don't got nothing to live for anyway. They're going to try to take me out anyway.